Peace, family. Y'all know who it is. It's Bakari Lumumba back once again, the progenitor of LumumbaSpeaks.com, a Black empowerment initiative where we believe we could gain a competitive advantage by always betting on Black. Uh, Back with another video where we're seeking to have a rather progressive but yet provocative conversation regarding is going to jail. Is jail the new rite of passage to manhood? This is a conversation that's been taking place in the barbershops and in the proverbial hood, kind of ghetto, as we like to say. So I wanted to bring it, of course, to my platform and have this conversation of is jail the new rite of passage to manhood? If you're watching, make sure that you hit the like button, thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe, like, and share. I believe the link is in the description. We will put the link in the chat momentarily as we have this conversation regarding is jail the new rite of passage to manhood. But before we get started and we go over, of course, some of the ground rules here at Lumumba Speaks, I want to make sure I share with you all. Hope you all are having a happy Juneteenth weekend. I'm going to attend some Juneteenth celebrations Sunday and Monday. I've been out on social media and I've seen that some people have said that there have been a lot of white people at the Juneteenth celebration, some of the Juneteenth celebrations. So I definitely think we will do a show on what does that mean for Juneteenth? Is Juneteenth being co-opted, right? Is Juneteenth being sanitized or whitewashed due to the proliferation of white people attending these events? So definitely want to make sure we do a show on that. Is Juneteenth, of course, being whitewashed? Matter of fact, I'm going to write that down. And we're going to then move forward. But I want to make sure I go over today's Black History Fact. Today's Black History Fact is 152 years ago today, the civil rights activist, author, songwriter, lawyer, and educator, most known for writing the Black national anthem, Live Every Voice and Sing. James Weldon Johnson was born this day 152 years ago in Jacksonville, Florida. Shout out to Duval, right? Duval County, Florida. If you're unfamiliar, Duval County is, of course, the county in which Jacksonville is the county seat. So most people, if you're from Jacksonville, they simply call it Duval. So just want to make sure we put that out there. But we're going to go over the ground rules once again here at Lumumba Speaks. And then we're going to get the conversation started. So first and foremost, diversity of thought is welcome, right? Diversity of thought is welcome. I don't care if you're on the left, you're on the right, or you're right down the middle. If you have a perspective that you want to share, you can tap in and be part of the conversation. However, we do not allow racial epithets of any kind here on our channel. So no racial epithets of any kind. This is a space for Black empowerment. We believe in the 3 N's of Black power, which are self-respect, self-defense, and be self-determining. So as African people, we're going to respect ourselves, not refer to ourselves or our brothers and sisters, even if they have a dissenting opinion or maybe even an ideology that we believe is repressive. We're not going to engage in that type of rhetoric or language. And when we're talking about our own people, number 3, facts over feelings. So if someone provides a perspective that you disagree with, we want you to attack the opinion and not the person. I was actually on a Instagram live having a conversation. I provided a dissenting opinion, and the brother started attacking my person rather than the argument that I was making. We want to make sure that we do not do that here at, of course, Lumumba Speaks. We want to attack the argument, not the person. We do not want to engage, in what is known as ad hominem attacks, right? And then last but not least, no fundamentally false statements. So you can provide your perspective on a particular issue, even if it's a dissenting opinion. There may even be a non-traditional perspective regarding this particular issue, but we want to make sure that you don't make any claims that are fundamentally false. I was using an example of, you could believe LeBron James and Michael Jordan is the better basketball player. But if you were to say that LeBron James only won 1 championship, that would be a fundamentally false statement. So then, of course, I will have to step in and block that. And last but not least, here at Lumumba Speaks, our mission is neither to exonerate or vilify, but to simply challenge conventional wisdom and re-examine what has been previously accepted as fact. So with that being said, I'm going to put the link in the chat, family. Then I'm going to have you all tap in, and we're going to have a conversation regarding, is jail the new rite of passage to manhood? I've done a little research and seeing that there was an actual doctoral dissertation written on this very subject matter. There was even a Washington Post article in which this was the actual title in terms of is going to jail, going to prison. Prison has become a rite of passage, right? So I think this is an issue that we need to discuss in our community, unpack in our community. Why has this become the case? I would argue that uh, going to prison has become normalized. We know that oftentimes there's a stigma with going to prison, but in some aspects of our community, and we know our people are not a monolith. In some pockets of our community, going to prison has been praised, it's been pedestalized. I can even call, my favorite MC Nas talking about that they would throw a block party to his man who was going up north to do his 2 to 4, right? So throwing block parties to people who were going to prison. So many would argue that maybe that's a criminal mindset, criminal mentality, criminal culture. But I would argue that it's become pervasive in our community, particularly due to the proliferation of rap music. And we know there's a difference between rap and hip hop. We also know that this coming up August will be the 50th anniversary of the the musical genre known as hip hop, right? So with that being said, family, the link is in the chat. Want you all to tap in, provide your perspective. Make sure you hit the thumbs up button, thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up, like, share, subscribe. You're watching Lumumba Speaks here on YouTube, where we're seeking to have the conversation. Is jail the new rite of passage to manhood, right? I can even recall I was watching, I believe, it was a Dateline NBC documentary on a murder for hire. And young man participated, but he only got like 6 months to a year in a county jail. And his parents actually said, and this was a white guy, so we see that this is an issue that's pervasive, or even endemic, some would say, to American culture. And the guy's parents said, my son went into jail a boy, but he came out a man. So we're seeing that even with parents, there's a belief that jail or prison would make a man of someone. I find that hard to believe, but definitely would love to get some people to tap in and share their perspective on why they believe that this is something that's become rather commonplace. I also want to share a tweet that I actually screenshot and posted to my channel, in which a young lady, this is a black woman states, it's unattractive to me when a man has never been to jail before. You're not even a man yet. And of course, a brother replies, and I think he has a Kobe Bryant profile picture. He says, this is why y'all be getting beat up, right? So we're seeing what many people would argue is what toxic femininity, even advocating that men aren't real men unless they've engaged in criminal activity, not only engaged in criminal activity, but have been caught engaged in criminal activity, and of course had to suffer the consequences of that criminal activity by being incarcerated. So I would argue that this is a rather self-defeating type of mindset or ideology that we're seeing in our community. Many would argue that this is something that's being promoted in the media. Some would even argue that hip-hop rap culture is to blame for Ja Morant's, of course, forays with playing with firearms, guns, and we all know that he's been subsequently, as a result of that behavior, been suspended for 25 games from the NBA. So I think there's a lot to unpack here, a lot to discuss. Hope that we can definitely have a great conversation this evening. This is, of course, Juneteenth weekend, 2023, and we're seeking to have a conversation. Is jail the new rite of passage to manhood? We can even argue womanhood. We know, unfortunately, here in America, that Black men and Black women lead in incarceration rate. We lead in terms of those incarcerated, in terms of aggregate numbers, and those even involved in the carceral state. So we're talking about prison, probation, and parole. So these are some definite issues that I think we need to unpack. I think any of us who are being honest, we know that when we're talking about seeking to restore people to our traditional greatness, we're fighting against what external as well as internal enemies, and that some of those enemies are the racially disempowering, self-defeating, and self-destructive manners in which we live our daily lives. So extremely problematic. Some of this behavior has become normalized, and I would argue that as a result of the behavior becoming normalized, many become desensitized and then engage in the behavior without even considering the long-term consequences of one's actions. So definitely believe that this is a conversation that needs to be had, and we hope that some people can tap in and be part of the conversation here on this Juneteenth weekend, 2023. We're seeking to have the conversation, is jail the new rite of passage to manhood. Once again, it's jail, the new rite of passage to manhood. You're watching the Mumba Speaks here on YouTube, where we're seeking to have the conversation regarding jail being the new rite of passage to manhood, and what effect does that have, right? I would argue that if you believe going to jail is a new rite of passage, this is an issue in which there's been a breakdown in the social structure, right? Particularly from a traditional standpoint, African traditional culture standpoint, and even when, of course, in African American culture, men were the ones who, of course, were responsible for what creating a process that moved that young man into manhood, and for the sisters and the young women, the same took place as well. So definitely want to have this conversation. Once again, the link is in the chat, family. The link is also in the description. If you want to tap in and give your say so, give your thoughts regarding why you believe jail is possibly the new rite of passage uh, to manhood and womanhood in the Black community. So definitely want you all to tap in and be part of the convo. Definitely want that to take place. So don't be a stranger. I know this is Juneteenth weekend, but I think we can have a great conversation. Let's see, pull something up here for you all regarding this issue. I don't think I will be able to. Going back a couple years, almost 20 years ago now, talking about how time flies, we know that Akon, he actually had a song, a single, in which he, of course, many people argue he was praising criminality and criminal behavior, right? The song was Locked Up, featuring, of course, Styles P of the Locks. And many people argue that he was celebrating being incarcerated, right? It's extremely problematic. There's a lot of blowback, from the Black community, particularly from the Black media regarding the song. So these are some things I think we can unpack this evening. Once again, I know it's Juneteenth weekend. I know some people are possibly celebrating what W. Du Bois argued was our brief moment in the sun where we was able to celebrate our Jubilee before what turned around and going right back into enslavement. And we know he was referring to in that system of social control known as sharecropping. But for those of you all who are celebrating Juneteenth, definitely want to wish you all a happy Juneteenth. As I said it before, we're going to do a show on is Juneteenth being whitewashed. I saw a post stating that at the Juneteenth celebrations, there was a large segment of the population that was, of course, white. And so there were some individuals who took umbrage with that. As Juneteenth gone mainstream, right? Has Juneteenth gone to the point that now that it is a federal holiday, it's going to lose its actual luster. It's going to lose its true meaning of what it actually stands for. So that's a question that we're going to have to ask. And if that is the case, we have to make sure that we as a people are the ones who are organizing the celebrations and making sure we're the ones controlling the celebrations. We know that many in our community are assimilationists, seeking to always gain white validation, even in the Black spaces. So we want to make sure that we are careful that that's not the case, not only in Juneteenth, but in all things that we're doing, in which we seek to celebrate our own struggle, but also celebrate the unique way that we are, of course, African and human in the fullest sense. So with that being said, family, the link is in the chat. The link is in the chat. Hopefully you all can tap in and be part of the conversation regarding is jail the new rite of passage to manhood. Once again, is jail the new rite of passage to manhood. We know that, unfortunately, Black men and Black women lead by a country mile, unfortunately, in terms of aggregate numbers of those who are not only incarcerated, but also those who are on prison and probation and parole. And so we want to have a conversation about this issue that's really been lingering in the community regarding jail making boys and men. I would disagree. I would beg to differ, but I would definitely love to hear many of you all's conversations, your thoughts regarding this concept of it. If jail is jail, the new rite of passage to manhood. So the link is in the chat. I'll put the link in the chat once again. And of course, the link is in the description. I believe it is. I could check, but I believe the link is in the description. And then we can move forward and have a great conversation regarding how do we combat. I think that's part of the question. How do we combat the carceral state, right? So definitely want to make sure that is something that we are seeking to unpack, seeking to address here. Why do you disagree? So, Sister Love Ash, I take it you're here. Well, tap in, sister. I need you to tap in, and I would explain my reasoning. So, and once again, we're not going to have a contentious back and forth, but I appreciate you. The last show you said that we didn't have a contentious back and forth, but tap in, and then I will share with you why I would disagree. Right. So tap in, and I will give my opinion, my perspective. We got to get like at least 2,500 people up in here when we had this conversation. This is a conversation that needs to be had in our community. And I would give my perspective why I believe prison is not the new rite of passage, and why we should not view it as a new rite of passage. So I think Brother Bawana always talks about when these things are taking place, we have to look at who ultimately benefits from these type of actions, these type of behaviors, these type of initiatives, these type of policies that are being implemented. And I would argue, of course, that we do not benefit. And then I'm going to, of course, provide my perspective as someone who's been formerly incarcerated. Many of you know I've shared this on a number of occasions. I have not ever been to prison, and I never plan on going to prison, right? But of course, when I was young, I engaged in some type of some behavior that was seen as socially deviant, and I had gone to jail before being arrested. So just something to be cognizant of, that will color my perspective a bit. So make sure you tap in. Sister Love Ash is tapping in. Okay. I appreciate you, sister. Hey, are you ever gonna cam up for us?
I will one day, just not today. I
Well,
will one day
you
though.
be ducking and dodging, ducking and
I
dodging. So
do.
it's all good. I appreciate you being happy Juneteenth weekend, sister.
You as well.
Appreciation. So before we get started, let me ask you, what attributes do you attribute to a rite of passage program?
Um, I would say like a ritual, so to
Okay.
speak.
Yes. So they typically are rituals. Well, but what type of things are typically taught in a rite of passage program?
Like survival skills.
Okay.
Um, I'm drawing a blank. I can't even think of anything else.
That was correct. So we could say survival skills. We would say
Like etiquette, things of that
etiquette. There we
nature.
go. Yeah, that's pretty good. Values are typically taught, right? Things of that nature. So as I said before, I've never been to prison. I don't plan on ever going to prison. But I've been to jail before when I was younger on several occasions, right? um, so the type of things that you would learn in a rite of passage program are the type of things you would learn in jail, right? Second, I think if you think about the population of individuals who are in jail, this is a population of individuals that by and large are not well educated, well read, or even well spoken, right? So oftentimes individuals there read on a third or fourth grade level. So it's not like you're going to learn much in that type of space that's going to help you go out into society and do well and be competitive and provide value, right? Um, so I think that's one issue. I think also once again the culture is I would argue really evokes operating at the lowest level, operating in the manner of your lowest self. Are you following what I'm saying here?
Yeah.
So, in my personal opinion, I actually I would argue that it actually that going to jail, and if you are someone who was easily influenced, and or if you were to believe that going to jail would make you a man, you more likely than not would become, in my opinion, less of a man and more of a burden to our community. Because I see a man as someone who is constructive, not destructive. Okay, so in my opinion, someone who would engage in that type of behavior um, wouldn't be someone I would consider a man.
So why do you think that formerly incarcerated men say those things?
Oh, whoo, wee. Okay, that's a great question. So if I was to give you a street corner answer, I would say it's because they're dumb as fuck, right?
But I want
I
the
know.
intellectual.
Right, I know. So I would say, well, one, that they don't know any better. Two is because they haven't actually gone through a rite of passage a process. Three, they don't actually know what it means to actually be a man. right? So
Right, yeah.
one of the things that we find in our community is a lot of young men, not all, but a lot of young men. I'm sure you've come across them in your foray into womanhood. Yes. Um, we find situations in which young men are teaching themselves what it means to be a man. It's how many children you sleep with, it's how many babies you can make, how many women you sleep with, how much alcohol you can consume, right? They, right, typically men teach the younger men, the boys, what it means to be a man, right? I've taught my son since he was what, maybe 4, 5, 6 years old. Being a man is someone who is consistently reliable, dependable, reliable, and principled, right? Well, if you're dealing with a criminal, criminal's principle typically is what? Whatever's convenient. So this is someone you can depend on. Why are principles and values important? Because when you know someone's value system, you can predict their behavior. Correct? So if I tell you I'm a Pan-Africanist, Sister Love Ash, you would know that without a shadow of a doubt, Bakari Lumumba is not going to put his hands on you. Correct?
Correct.
Right. If I told you I was a Muslim, you would know beyond a shadow of a doubt, Bakari isn't going to drink alcohol. Correct?
Correct.
So you see, being principled allows for what? You to what? There's some behavioral expectations, right? And as a result, you could then have a basis or a structure for a way to live one's life and what? Run and develop a household.
Okay, can I ask you one more question?
Don't shoot away.
Okay, so oftentimes when I'm in spaces such as these, well, maybe not as yours, but just in the zeitgeist of Pan
Okay.
Africanism,
Okay. Look at you. Okay. I know that's right.
um oftentimes there's an argument as far as African American people not
Mm-hmm.
having culture.
Mm,
And one of the arguments to basically help that argument, I should say, is that we don't necessarily have a rite of passage.
okay.
So, what would you say to that conversation?
So one, I would say that it's not true that we don't have a culture. Anyone who studied African American culture, in fact, I got a book right behind me entitled, drum roll please, The Birth of African American Culture, Anthropological Perspective. Right. That
Right,
so this concept of Black people, African Americans not having a culture is part of the master narrative that what our culture was destroyed during the Holocaust of enslavement. One, that isn't true. We know that there are numerous forms of African cultural retention that we practice here in African American culture. And as a matter of fact, I was having this conversation with my parents just yesterday, right? Number two, so that's number one. We need to be cognizant of that. Number two, there are rites of passage programs in Black culture, right? In fact, oftentimes those rite of passage programs would be in the African American church. Now, you know my perspective on Christianity, right? But just
right,
viewing it from an institutional standpoint and not a what religious standpoint, oftentimes you would go through a rite of passage to become a deacon or a deaconess, right? And as a result,
right.
there would be behavioral expectations that would be bestowed upon you that you would what accept, and then what would be reinforced by the community.
I just wanted your perspective on that
Yeah,
because I do hear that often.
yeah. So it's not. I would disagree. I would even argue if you grew up in a household as a young man who grew up in a household with his father, I would say I had a rite of passage type programming in my own home. When I turned 10, my dad told me to stop being up under my mom. Literally, like, hey, you're too old for that, right? And I can
So,
recall,
like, oh my God, I'm
no,
sorry.
go right ahead. I'm sorry.
So, like, rites of passage doesn't necessarily have to be like this sort of like program, like ceremony. It could be like the example you just gave.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, but there's an actual process in which you're being taught how to move from being a young lady to a woman, right?
Yeah.
And along with that, there are what certain things you learn and behavioral expectations that play a role as well. I'm quite sure you experienced that with your mother,
Yeah, I just never considered it a rites of passage. But once you put it like that,
right? But the problem is you have people who aren't getting that at all. As I think I said on my previous show, a lot of our people, unfortunately, are growing up in households that are criminal incubators. right? And so as
Yeah.
a result, they're not getting any type of tutelage training whatsoever. And the training that they are getting is to teach them to become a miscreant, right? So when they go to prison, they're going through a rite of passage that only encourages miscreant behavior. I can recall being incarcerated one time, and I'm sitting there and I'm upset on the phone trying to have people come post my bail. You know what I mean? And this guy was in there engaging in nefarious behavior. And I said, dude, why are you doing that? And he said, well, I wasn't doing right on the outside. So why am I going to do the right thing when I'm in here?
Yeah, the conversations that people be having
Yeah.
are pretty interesting.
Yes. So I think that that plays a huge role. A huge role. And we also know that oftentimes young men who do turn to the streets is due to the fact that they don't have a strong masculine father figure, not only in their life, but in the home. Right? Because it's one thing to say, oh, I have my dad in my life, but it's another to say he's in the home.
Right.
Because when
Right.
he's in the home, you're not going to come home at 2 o'clock in the morning. Because if you do, you know you're going to get jacked up. You see what I'm saying? So it's a huge
Yeah.
difference. There's a huge difference. In fact, when I was back home in Dayton yesterday, my parents and I, we were laughing and joking about how when I was 16, you know, that was many moons ago, right? I told my parents they were trying to ruin my life because they told me my curfew was 11 p.m. And I said, I want to move out. I don't want to live here anymore. They said, yeah, whatever, go to bed.
Did you ever try to run away?
Yes, I did once, right? And here's the thing: I was talking to one of my OGs, and he told me this. He's from Detroit, by the way. He says if you are a teenager and you have parents that are actually being parents and not your friend, you have either tried or have contemplated running away.
That's why I asked you that because both of my parents are originally from Detroit. So I was
Okay,
like, they always make that comment like, you don't have kids unless they try to run away from you.
yeah, because if you're doing your job, at some point that teenager, as they say that we're spelling ourselves, and that means you better go get some deodorant, right? Or you're going to be like, I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to live under these rules. You know, I would say they were archaic. You know, you act like this is the Middle Ages. Shut up. And then you leave and you run away, and then you realize, hey, I kind of got it made. I don't have to worry about paying rent, where my next meal going to come from, so on and so forth. Yes. So that is my perspective. I would love for people to tap in and get their perspective. So, Sister Ash, I'm gonna ask you, what is your perspective on if jail is the new rite of passage? Do you think it actually is a rite of passage, or do you think it is a pseudo rite of passage for manhood and womanhood in the Black community?
I really don't know what to think of it. I guess I would pick the latter, like it would be a pseudo.
Okay.
Um, but there was a time, if anybody ever watched my lives from 2020, there was a time where I was so like interested in this topic and
Mm,
just interested in like a different way of incarceration. I went down a whole rabbit hole at one point in time. And I had interviewed this one guy, and he felt very strongly about, you know, I went in as a boy, I came out as a man.
mm,
And like, even him, like looking within himself, he could honestly say, like, there is still some things about him that is very, like, immature or
mm-hmm.
childlike, if
Right.
you will. And
And
he didn't really,
that's the culture in there. Like I don't mean to
yeah.
cut you off, but I remember one time I was locked up, and I was like in my mid-20s, and this guy in there was 20 years older than me, and he acted like a teenager. And I literally thought the guy was like 19, he was 47. So
Yeah,
that's part of the culture. But I'm sorry, go right ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
he didn't really recognize it until he was out in the free world
Mm-hmm,
again. Like, there's certain things about myself that like is still very childlike. So
mm-hmm.
that's just a battle within. But yeah, it's something that I can't really make out even throughout all of that research. It's something that I just don't understand.
You know, and here's the thing. Well, it's because when you're in that space, you don't have to apply anything because everything's being done for you.
Yeah, all the meals, when
Yeah,
you
housing,
leave,
clothes, everything's being
when you get out.
provided
And
for you.
if you go as a child,
Hmm.
like a teenager, it's like you just rolling into, okay, this next person is telling me what to do. I already had someone at home telling me what to do. I'm just rolling into the next thing.
Right. So great point there. So what you're saying is there was a point in your life where you were into bad boys.
No, not necessarily. I was intrigued with
The thug life.
no, there was somebody I had went to like a conference and there was somebody talking about police brutality bonds. It was a whole rabbit hole thing. And I was like, oh, why don't I just talk to people about this topic? Like, how do they feel about policing, incarceration, other ways? How do they feel about the box, like solitary confinement, for those who don't know what that
I've been
means?
in solitary confinement before.
See, yeah, like topics like that. That's
So,
more
but here's the
so.
thing. Like for me, it wasn't. I mean, I was only in there for like a day or two, but it
So,
wasn't a
how'd
big
you
deal.
end up in the box?
First off, you why you asking get all of my business though? Now I had got into a physical altercation with someone,
Oh, okay, okay. Day
but
one. Well,
no, no, nobody bans against me. Come on now, you know better than that. Come on now. This you know my IG is Body by Lamoon for a reason. Am I right or wrong?
I'm laughing.
Come on now, don't do that. See, they're trying to put me in a box because you know I'm a nerd and shit.
No,
Um,
you put. I think being black is not one way
I know,
of it. Yeah,
I know. We're not a monolith. We're not a monolith.
yeah.
But it was cool for me because I had reading material, right? And I don't watch TV much anyway. I remember there was a time when I was in there and like the TV started working and the dudes were going crazy. They didn't even know how to what to do for the rest of the day, and it's because they became accustomed to being passively entertained. So I didn't, and they were like, "Well, why are you so cool?" I said, "Because I read on a regular basis. It don't bother me at all." So just something to be considerate of. Mhm. Something to be
But
considered.
see, even that is like intriguing to me because you're saying that, and then the guy that I interviewed, he said that at one point in time, like he wanted to be there, like he wanted to be away from everybody, and that his time in that space was good for him. Like
Mm,
to me, it's just so interesting to talk to, especially
mhm,
black men and
mhm.
their experiences.
Okay. Have you ever been incarcerated before?
I have not.
Okay. Do you want to be?
No, why would I ever want to be?
I mean, you
But
know, some people say, "Hey, it's a bucket list."
no.
Yeah, for some people, it's a bucket list. Straight up, no cap, no lie. Matter of fact, in Flint, Michigan, when they built the new county jail, the rich people in Flint actually went down to the jail and spent the night in the jail in tuxedos and gowns.
There's a museum that's like that. Like it's
Mm,
just, well, it's a restaurant slash museum. It's really weird. It's literally just a jail, and then they give people like jumpsuits, and it's a restaurant. Like
mm-mm.
they serve people. It's weird. I'm not intrigued like that, but yeah, it's really
Okay,
weird.
okay, all right. If you say so, if you say so, if you say so. So, have you ever interviewed any sisters who have been formerly
I
incarcerated?
did, and it's like night and day
Okay,
as far as
please share.
their experiences. Most of the women that I interview who unfortunately they're not on my Instagram, so you can't go, but the young man is um mostly, most of the time they are in there because of a man. They let their emotions get the best of them, or
So
they
you're saying
are.
so you're saying that black women lack self control.
No, I'm not saying that they lack self-control. I'm saying that in their story, it's never just, and I'm not trying to glorify serial killers, but like it's never just like I just did this, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
Or I did this to um put food on the table. Like the stories are different.
Okay, and so you're saying oftentimes when they were incarcerated it was for violent crimes.
It was for violent crimes, yes.
Okay.
And then versus black males, it's more of I didn't have anything. This is the only thing I knew how to do in
Mm.
order for me to do X, Y, and Z.
Do you think that's a valid excuse?
For the black men or for the black women? Because neither one is a valid excuse.
Okay, I'm just asking because I had a student in one of my classes state emphatically that black people have to commit crimes in order to make a living, and I said that that is hogwash. That is
They
bull.
have to make they
Yes,
have to commit crimes.
yes. I said that's bullshit. And he said, "Well, what else could you do?" I said, "You could join the military. You could go to Job Corps. You could go to college, trade school. You could be the cable guy."
It all boils down to choices,
Hmm.
really,
Yeah.
honestly, on both sides.
Right.
But the stories between black men are similar. The stories between black women were similar. It's just the genders are completely different, if that makes sense.
Okay. Well, I certainly would hope so. Right.
No, I mean like in their crime. Like as far as like let's just use drugs for an example.
Okay.
Um from what I conducted, it wasn't a lot of black women in there for drugs, if that
Okay.
makes
So you're saying you were using or selling?
as far as selling.
Okay. Okay. Go ahead.
Oh no, that was just it. That's what I mean. Like as far as
Okay.
the difference between black men and black women, like when they're incarcerated is for two different things.
Right. Okay. Okay. Um, when you had those conversations, well, particularly going back to the brother who said he went in a boy, he came out a man. Was he able to articulate why he believed that he had become a man?
Um, yes and no.
Mm,
I would, from what I gathered, I would attribute it to his religion, and I
which
think
was
which is he's Muslim now,
okay.
and I think he obtained a lot of knowledge. And when he got out, when it was time to apply that knowledge, I think he just surprised himself, so to speak. Like, oh, I know how to do X, Y, and Z, this, that. And then now that he's been out for some time, now he looks into himself and realizes that there are things about him that is still childlike. Like he didn't come into that knowledge about himself until later on.
And what could you provide some examples?
Like one of the examples that he used was just like going out to the club, how he acts when he's in the club.
How
He
did he
didn't
act?
go into detail about how he acts in
Okay.
the club, but he was just like, I noticed that it's similar to somebody that's like new to drinking, like someone that's 21 and I'm
I
this
would do
age.
it. Yeah. Well, most people are veterans and drinking by 21.
Right. So he's like, I'm just saying, like, as far as actions, like,
Right.
if you're a veteran, you would know how to handle your liquor. You would know how to do X, Y, and Z, or
Mhm.
at least that's the expectation. Um, but yeah, so that was kind of one of the things that he gave.
Okay. Okay. Got you. Any other examples regarding him behaving in what you believe to be still a childlike mindset or disposition as opposed to that of a man?
That was the only example that he gave.
Okay.
I didn't go into further questioning on that.
Well, how did you define manhood?
Oh, you allowing me to define manhood?
This, yeah, I mean, for this particular segment, absolutely. I just want to hear what you got to say.
I don't really have a perspective.
You don't.
No,
So how would you know what to look for when you're seeking a partner?
I'm not seeking a partner.
I'm saying when you are, or even if you are even willing to entertain overtures from a potential or prospective partner.
I wouldn't know.
Wow. Shut the front door. Okay.
It's like I know, but I don't really have the language to
You don't
articulate
have
it.
you do you have the language but do not know how to articulate it? That was
Um,
that was a question.
I don't know. I might. I don't know.
Okay. Okay. Very well. Very well. I mean, I just wanted to get your perspective on that. Is jail the new rite of passage? Do you have any friends or family members who have been incarcerated?
Yeah, I do.
Have you ever talked to them about their experience?
I have.
And what did they share?
It's mostly like the same stuff, like don't go to jail, like the obviously.
Mhm.
Um, that's just more so the rhetoric that they give.
Okay. Were there any conversations regarding that it made them a man or a woman?
Yeah, but it wasn't like as far as like detail. It's the same. It's the same like
Rhetoric.
sentence. Like I went in as a child, came out a man. Like it's the same thing.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. Not bad. Not bad at all. All right. I appreciate you tapping in, sister. Appreciate you tapping in. Holding it down for the 937 by way of the 619. 100%. Well, have you been to any Juneteenth celebrations this weekend?
No, not yet.
Because I've been seeing a lot of people post on Twitter that a lot of the Juneteenth celebrations they've gone to have been predominantly white. So this may be an issue that we have to be concerned with moving forward.
Yeah, I'm banned from Twitter right now,
Oh,
so
really? Why is that? Hold on.
I don't even know what's going on in Twitter world, which is actually kind of a good thing. So,
But you know why you got banned? They tell you.
well, yeah, they tell you.
Why'd you get banned?
So I got banned because I don't even know what culture this is. I'm assuming it's a monk, like the men that wear like that kind of like rusky colored like
Okay.
cloth top.
Okay.
I don't know what that is. And so
Right.
he
Right.
was on I think it was on CNN. And there was a clip there and there was a little child
Hmm.
that he kissed on the
Right.
mouth.
Right.
Okay, okay, you seen that.
Yeah. Yeah. I know what you're talking about.
And so the comment that I made, I had made it like a few times, not on his, on not just on that post, but on a few other posts. Nothing. And I put like, oh, he should be hung for that. And then next thing you know, they send me an email like, oh, you have been suspended, da da da. And then they screenshot like your tweet.
How long have you been suspended? How long is your
It's
suspension?
been like well, however long that video came out. I don't even know.
Okay. Well, when does it
When
end?
that video came out, that's basically I got
But
suspended the next day.
have they told you when it ends? When your suspension ends?
It's indefinitely. Like I'm never gonna be able to get on Twitter
Wow.
ever again. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't play about the violence thing. You should know that.
But it's like it's a child, and then they give you like the bylaws, like oh, like child abuse, da da da. And so when I have appealed it, I'm like, this literally is child abuse. But I mean, honestly, it is what it is.
I got you. I got you. Well, like I said, sister, I appreciate you tapping in. We got some people viewing. The link's in the chat if you want to tap in and be part of the conversation. We're having a conversation regarding is jail the new rite of passage to manhood. We definitely want to get you all thoughts. Make sure you hit the subscribe and like button. Thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. Make sure you share as well. You're watching Lumuma Speaks here on YouTube. And do not be a stranger to the Cash App or the Super Chat. We definitely appreciate your support. That allows us to keep the show going. So if you could bless us in that manner, it'd be greatly appreciated. But
Now,
what,
can I ask you a personal question?
please,
Now, do you have any family members incarcerated currently or formerly?
currently, yes.
And have you spoken to them since being incarcerated or no?
No.
Okay.
What that individual did, I won't associate with them because of what they did.
Understandable.
Yeah. So it's just some things uh, I just believe are
Some
but
things are unforgivable.
yes, unforgivable, and that's just something that I won't allow myself to do. So to have any type of association with that individual, but in any way, shape, or form. So yeah. But yeah, I've had family members who have been incarcerated before. Of course, like I said, I've been incarcerated before. And I just can recall, you just like, man, a lot of people in here are stupid as hell, like just dumb. And then you see why there's such a high recidivism rate, because the lack of cognitive development, what belies their inability to be a critical thinker. So yeah, I thought you was going to ask me something crazy when you said personal question.
Oh no, I didn't want to. I mean, I try not to pry and get, but
No,
you're pretty personal on your platform,
this is
so I
true.
just wanted to
Yeah.
ask.
Mhm. Yeah. Is jail the new rite of passage to manhood? That's the question that we're asking this evening. Is jail the new rite of passage to manhood? Make sure you tap in. The link is in the chat. You're watching Lumumba Speaks here on YouTube, a Black Empowerment Initiative, where we believe we can always gain a competitive advantage by always betting on Black. Once again, today's Black History fact is that 152 years ago today, James Weldon Johnson, the civil rights activist, historian, law attorney, and of course songwriter, most known for writing the Black National Anthem, Lift Up Your Voice and Sing, was born on this day 152 years ago in Jacksonville, Florida. Shout out to Duval County, Florida. So just want to make sure we put that out there in terms of today's Black History fact. But once again, we're having a rather engaging discussion regarding, is jail the new rite of passage to manhood. The links in the chat, family. Definitely want you all to tap in, be part of the conversation. And then, of course, we can even open up the conversation to why has this become a talking point in our community that I went in a boy and I came out a man, right? So we could definitely have that discussion as well. So the link is in the chat. Sister Love Ash is tapping in, giving her perspective. But I believe you would argue, and I just want to make sure I'm correct here. You stated that no, you do not believe that jail is a new rite of passage, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Um, so there are people in our community who believe that this is the case. What should we do to try to provide alternatives to, of course, the carceral state being a form of young adult to adult development?
That's a hard question.
Come on now. So you got a master's degree, right?
We working on it. I ain't
Come
got
on.
it yet, but we working on it.
I know you got a bachelor's though.
I do.
And didn't you minor in Pan African Studies?
No, but
You went.
I was in the building. I was in the building. You would have
All
thought.
right, then. So
You would have thought.
we need you to apply that. You know what I mean? We need you to apply that.
Okay, ask the question again. One more time.
How can we provide how do we provide an alternative to, of course, our youth believing that the carceral state is the pathway to manhood and womanhood in our community? Are you there?
I'm there, but I'm like, I don't even know.
No, all right. So listen, if you're watching, family, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, and share. The link is in the chat. Hope you all could tap in and be part of the conversation as well regarding, is jail the new rite of passage to manhood? We know, unfortunately, in our community, Black people, Black men and women, we lead by a country mile, unfortunately, in terms of incarceration rate and the actual population of those who are incarcerated, not let alone in prison, probation, and parole. And we're not even talking about those who are awaiting sentencing or fighting cases in jail. So really want to really unpack why this has become the belief, and even unpack why have Black people become so enthralled, um, entrapped by the carceral state. I mean, we know, first and foremost, we know the criminal justice system is inherently racist at every level, local, state, and federal. And we know that Black people, irrespective of where you are in the country, are more likely to be sentenced to a longer sentence than their white counterparts. So the question, I think, really that needs to be asked is, why do we have people still engaging in these type of crimes, knowing that they're going to be giving longer sentences for the same behavior? So, Sister Ash, when you was back out in the streets, thugging, drinking, and drugging, what led?
No. Don't quit
What
your day job with that.
led, what led you to turn away from a life of crime?
Can you say that again? You kind of
Yes,
cut
what
out on
led
my.
you to turn away from a life of crime? Because you was in the mean streets of Huber Heights.
Again, I was only there for a year. He keeps trying to play me.
And in that year, you were known to turn up, right? So what led you to moving in in a different direction?
I think it's just knowing that there's nothing that good coming out of it.
Mm,
Like it's just
okay.
not worth. You only got one life. It's not really worth
One life to live.
anything. Yeah. But
Okay,
again,
so
like you had stated previously, like sometimes it's a lack of knowledge.
mhm.
But I
So
had, and I'm not trying to brag
no, go right
at
ahead.
all, but like I've had a lot more men in my family who were incarcerated. They're all formerly incarcerated. Um and it
That is
was just
a tragedy.
like, yeah, they out. But it was just a lot for sure.
Got you. So Mark Milner says, by teaching them that the system they live under must be overthrown. Interesting answer to a complex question. I hope you could tap in, brother, and really share because I don't know. I don't know if that would be in my opinion the adequate answer because typically when you do that, and I've worked with young men, they would say, okay, so the system is oppressive and racist. So if I go to jail, they blame the system rather than their own behavior, right? So I would want to unpack that there. I know a brother who did 10 years in prison for armed robbery, and he was cool with one of my homeboys who was his cousin, and he would be on the phone while he was in prison talking about, I'm in here because of the prison industrial complex. So he never took accountability for the fact that he did a dime, he did 10 years because he was engaged in criminal activity where he robbed another black person at gunpoint. Right. So I think that's something that we really have to be cognizant of to where we can talk about and understand that we live in a white nationalist or white supremacist state, but we also have to be accountable for our own actions. Right. Um, and I think that oftentimes is what's not taking place, particularly when we talk about young men who fall victim to the system. We tend to find that at a very early age, they are not held accountable for their actions or their behavior. That is always someone else's fault. And that is, of course, um, the worst way to bring someone into what I would argue is principled, disciplined, responsible, masculine manhood. So that's my perspective on that. Once again, brother Mark, if you're still around, you could join, hit the link, tap in, and share your perspective. Maybe you aren't able to clearly articulate or elucidate what you mean in that small, of course, sentence. So we definitely hope you could tap in and do that. Um, any thoughts on Brother Mark's post, Sister Ash?
Yeah, that was interesting, like you said, because you can know things, but like not necessarily know how to apply it. Like
Mm.
it's like what they say. I don't know how the saying goes, but it's like great wording, wrong scenario. Like it doesn't
Mm.
apply to
Okay.
you in that situation.
Okay. Very good. Very good. Okay. Okay. Wonderful. Wonderful. Once again, if you're watching, the link is in the chat if you want to tap in, be part of the conversation. We're having a conversation going. Is jail the new rite of passage to manhood? And I can say that because the times I was incarcerated, I never viewed it as this is going to help me become a man. I was always like, I'm mad and I'm in here and I want to get out.
Now, did you ever like what was the youngest age that you were when you went in?
I think I was maybe, that's a good question. I think I was maybe 20.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think I was like 20.
So
Yeah.
you was a lot older than the people that I spoke to.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was 20. So yeah. And I think part of it, and I think that's a great point you bring up. A lot of times when we see people, young men in our community, they've been arrested and incarcerated at a very early age, right? And I remember there was a time when I was incarcerated. A guy told me that when he was 13 years old, he would just be stealing people's cars and joyriding all the way to Cleveland. And he said he just,
Yeah, they be as young as
yeah, and
13.
he was like, well,
I was,
we would just do that for fun. He said, and he asked me, he said, well, what did you used to do for fun when you were 13? I said, we would go to the park, play basketball, like holler at girls. We were thinking about breaking into somebody's car. So you know, for him to be doing that, that means that he had been groomed by someone of older age
Yeah, older.
into that type of activity. It goes back to what household being a criminal incubator, and what they were breaking in cars and joyriding. They weren't doing it for economic need, right? They weren't taking a car to a chop shop and then getting paid, right? So just something to be cognizant of.
And that's another thing too. Like even, I mean, I know we shouldn't be looking to celebrities and athletes and stuff, but like even like
Uh-oh.
athletes, like why are you going back? Why are you going backwards? Like you're not proving nothing. Like you in your 40s. Like what are you even doing?
So who are you referring to when you say in your 40s?
What's his name? Is it Steven Jackson?
Okay, what about him?
So he had went or frequently goes, I don't know. But he had went back to Chicago and was on O Block, like basically like can't nobody check me, da da da. I'm like, ain't you in your 40s? Why is you going back?
Right.
Like, what are you trying to do?
Well, and I think you can speak to this, that you have encountered numerous black men your age and older who seem to have a level of arrested development. Would you agree with that?
I agree.
Yes. You're like, this dude is 37 years old, but he acts like he's 21. Arrested development. And I make the argument, and I'm not original in this type of proclamation, but I make the argument that the reason why we're seeing such a large number of black men who have seemingly been afflicted by arrested development is because the standards and the outcomes, the requirements for black men have changed, in my opinion. And that's why we're seeing this type of juvenile behavior in grown men that we did not see in such large quantities in previous generations. So I think it's just something to be cognizant of. Once again, family, if you're watching, the link is in the chat. Tap in, be part of the conversation. We're having a conversation regarding is jail the new rite of passage to manhood? We're seeking to unpack why there are individuals in our community that believe that being incarcerated makes you a man or a woman. So once again, the link is in the chat, family. Hope you all can tap in. Thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. Like, share, subscribe. You're watching Lumumba Speaks here on YouTube, a Black empowerment initiative where we believe we can always bet on black. Tap in, join the conversation as we unpack why there is a belief. I believe this is a misbelief, of course, but a belief that jail is the new rite of passage to black manhood and womanhood in the African American community. So, arrested development. I think that's a major issue that we may want to unpack moving forward. So, absolutely. Any final thoughts, Sister Ash?
No.
All right. Well, I appreciate you tapping in. I'm going to log off. And until next time, y'all know what to do. Peace.